Hello, this is Pat Tormey, and this is How Do I Winforms Print Form Control. Now, a little bit about the print form control. They were originally released as a series of tools that came as the Visual Basic Power Pack, and you might have seen it in 2005, and it's available for 2008. However, in the SP1 release, the Visual Basic Power Pack is integrated with the new Service Pack release. However, it does not seem to install with the version I have anyway of the Visual Basic Express. It does, however, show up as Visual Basic Power Pack, just as you see here in C#, meaning that it's probably misnamed. It probably should be called Power Pack. But anyway, let's get into it. What the print form control is designed to do is to allow you to do what we used to be able to do in VB6 for you VB6ers, and that's just to be able to drag and drop, and that's just to be able to print the form natively from inside the form itself. If you've installed the Visual Basic Power Pack or the SP1 release, you should be able to see these new controls. There's print form, there's line shape, oval shape, rectangle shape, and the data repeater control. So let's jump in. I put my print form control on the form, and now it would be kind of a nice idea to have a button to tell it to do something. And my button here, we'll give it some properties. I'll call it button print form, and we'll use almost exactly the same thing for the text on the button itself. So the first thing we'll do is I'll just say with me.printform1, and I'll tell it that I needed to its print action to be to print to the preview. And of course, if you notice there, I also had the option to print to a file, preview, or directly to the printer, the default being print to printer. So we'll say preview for our test purposes here. And next thing I'm going to do is tell it to print. And it says, well, okay, what do you want to print? Well, I'm going to pass it me, but I could pass it, as you see, any open form. And then I'm going to give it a parameter to tell it I'd like to do just the client area only. Notice I have the choice of compatible mode client only, compatible mode full window, the full window, and scrollable. And we'll look at those in a minute. Client only ought to do it for us. Now, before I print that, it's going to be a little ugly because my background color is, of course, going to be included. So I'm going to change my background color to something that's not quite as ugly when you see it in person. And we'll just make that custom white. Okay, now when I run that, we get this dialog box, which will let you zoom in on it, and it'll let you do side-by-side comparison or actually kick it to the printer itself. So I'm just going to close that. Notice we can also scan pages. I'm just going to close that. Alright, so that's it in a nutshell. What else could we do with such a thing? Now you might be wondering why it has as many print options here, and I'm just going to point you to the reference for that, and I'll just put a note in the code here. And essentially the compatibility mode that you see when this thing drops down is compatibility with the old VB6 stuff. So we won't be using it for our own purposes, but to help you understand it, I might as well go ahead and just include it. Put a little comment in there, and there you can see it for yourself. And you can read that at your leisure. Alright, so another thing I might want to do is actually change the orientation. So I'll say that I want to print. So if you want to print in landscape mode, you'd think all you have to do is go in here and say that you wanted to print printer settings dot landscape. And landscape's asking you for the landscape angle. So you might think, well, okay, I could just put in landscape angle here, and we'll put 180 degrees in there, and then move off the line. But you see, what happens is the landscape angle is read-only. So that means we can't get away with that. So what we really have to do here is say that the printer settings dot default page settings is equal to, dot landscape is equal to true. Now, normally you wouldn't want to be bothered with actually changing the landscape equal to true for just a second like this, because that's not the best way to treat other people using the machine. So we're not going to say that. What we're actually going to do is drag this little bit of code I have here and remember the original landscape by just asking it, what is the default mode? Then we're going to set it equal to true for our purposes, and then set it back to landscape mode. And I'm doing that just to be kind to the other users, because one of them might be me. Okay, now you can't actually see this happen, but we'll run it anyway. Just you'll have to take my word for what comes out the printer, because I'm just going to run it. And I'll say print form, and while you can't see this too easily, it would be in landscape mode if I actually hit print right now. Alright, so that's a pretty easy way to control that. This is Pat Tormey, and you've been watching How Do I WinForms using the PrintForm control that's available now as Service Pack 1 of Visual Studio 2008.